Hi, everyone. It's Ed Lee of NewNFT.com. I know it's been quite a while since I created a video, but I've been working hard on several different projects, and I'm happy to share with you one of them. It's a paper that I've just posted online, and I'll provide a link to it underneath on the information below. The title of the paper is NFTs as Decentralized Intellectual Property, or NFTs as Decentralized IP, or even shorter, NFTs as DIP. Now, you may be asking yourself, what exactly is DIP? Well, I hope you download the paper and take a look at my theory. I know it'll be controversial, but hopefully it will be informative to you as my explanation for what is going on with the development of NFTs. In today's episode, I will give you a preview of what to expect, but we don't have enough time to go over all of the details of why I think NFTs are operating as decentralized intellectual property. Okay, so a brief preview of the paper and my theory of decentralized IP. In order to understand it, I think we need to start first with a different movement called DeFi, or decentralized finance. This movement has been going on for longer than DIP, but it has provided a model, I believe, to compare with how NFTs are operating. Okay, so for decentralized finance, the DeFi system, it's important to understand the history of it and what it is reacting to. It is reacting to perceived failures of the centralized financial system of the United States and of other countries. In the United States, the Federal Reserve is the main government agency that sets the monetary policy of the United States, including the setting of the interest rates, which is always a major concern for investors, the stock market, and banks. Now, in between the next layer are intermediaries that are the banks and the financial institutions that are, for instance, giving loans to businesses, giving loans for home purchases, giving loans to consumers. And at the bottom of the food chain, so to speak, are the investors, the regular people who are putting money into banks and financial institutions, and those banks and financial institutions are making money off your money. Now, you may be getting some interest, for instance, for savings deposits, but the banks are definitely making money in investments off of the money that you're investing. Okay, now what is the failure or the failings of the centralized financial system? That would be a long video, and we could have an extended discussion. In a nutshell, one of the major failures that has been sort of perceived as a failure of the centralized financial system is, of course, the 2008 financial crisis, which was driven largely by risky subprime mortgages that were given out that eventually defaulted and resulted in havoc to the financial system. And the role of the Federal Reserve in that, some critics argue that the Federal Reserve's low interest rates during this period extended too long and helped to create the crisis that led to the subprime mortgage fiasco. Now, that we could debate how sort of accurate that is, but that is one of the main criticisms that has been lodged during the financial crisis and the Federal Reserve's role. So the decentralized financial system is a movement to avoid some of the failures of the centralized financial system, including, one of the main ones is having a central regulator that is controlling the interest rates and potentially, arguably, manipulating the supply of currency as one example. So instead of that, there is peer-to-peer technology called blockchain that is used to keep track of cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin, for example, the most famous cryptocurrency, but there are a lot of altcoins, so to speak, that are other forms of cryptocurrencies. All of them are stored on blockchain. The transactions involving those cryptocurrencies are recorded on blockchain, which operates as sort of a public ledger, so that anybody could identify where the token is in the public ledger of blockchain. Now, there still are intermediaries in the decentralized financial system, so-called fintech companies. Some of them operate sort of like banks. They can give consumers loans, but those loans are in the form of cryptocurrency as opposed to loans based on dollars. And the virtue of this decentralized financial system is that it is less prone to manipulation or the control of a centralized agency like the Federal Reserve. Now, again, we could debate the merits of that argument in a different video, but I'm just reporting what is the rationale for those who are advancing this decentralized financial system, or at least one of the main rationales. Okay, so that's DeFi in a nutshell. And I know I'm going through this rather quickly to get to the DIP theory that I have laid out in my paper. So DIP, or decentralized IP, operates in a similar way. We have a centralized copyright system. In fact, the copyright clause of the Constitution, the US Constitution, gives power to Congress to create a copyright system. And Congress has done so since 1790, the very first Copyright Act. Our current act was enacted in 1976. It went into effect in 1978, well before the advances of computers and well before the internet. In this system, Congress is the central determiner of the copyright laws. In addition, the Copyright Office, which is a part of the Library of Congress and headed by the Register of Copyrights, has important roles in establishing policies, position papers for potential reforms in copyright. And also the Copyright Office plays a critical role in serving as kind of a facilitator among the various stakeholders, lobbyists, copyright industries, tech companies, to try to work on compromises for agreement on potential proposals for amendments to the Copyright Act, which is incredibly difficult to achieve, given the various interests of those stakeholders. Now, just as the centralized financial system had intermediaries in the form of banks and financial institutions, our copyright system has intermediaries in the forms of the major studios, labels, publishers, who operate as de facto gatekeepers to choose which artists or authors they want to sign, so to speak, and then commercially promote their works to the mass consumers. And this system of copyright emanates from the federal statute, the Copyright Act of 1976, and it is one that can be characterized as being centralized, since the federal law and federal statute is what gives the contours to it. Now, what is DIP, or decentralized IP, which I argue is being developed by the use of NFTs? Well, again, we have an alternative system which is not subject to centralized control of an institution such as Congress. Instead, we have peer-to-peer technology of blockchain. Instead of cryptocurrency, we now have tokens called NFTs, non-fungible tokens, being recorded on blockchain. We also have intermediaries in the form of the marketplaces where people can sell NFTs. Now, some of them, granted, are curated, meaning they choose which producers of NFTs actually get onto their site, like Super Rare. But others, such as OpenSea, the largest marketplace, is completely open to any creator of an NFT to post their NFT collection for sale. Now, instead of having copyright as the sort of main intellectual property at the center of the copyright system, what we have is the NFT, a computer program that creates a virtual token that is often associated with some copyrighted content, such as a cartoon character, which then has, ideally it's supposed to have a content license telling the buyer what use rights they get to the cartoon character or the artwork. And I have a different video that goes through the mechanics more that I'll link to in the information below. So the virtue of this DIP system is that it is not subject to the control of one institution like Congress. Now, why is that potentially helpful? Well, it's helpful when it's very difficult for Congress to enact copyright amendments, much less a major revision, modernization of the Copyright Act. There have been plenty of policymakers, former registers of copyright, Maria Palente, Barbara Ringer, who have recognized the need to update the Copyright Act of 1976. But the prospects for that happening are basically slim to none. So instead of waiting for Congress to provide this major revision to the Copyright Act of 1976, we have a different way of modernizing it through the use of NFTs and also content licenses and the development of norms. And that's what my theory lays out in detail in the paper whose link is below. Okay, now we don't have time to walk through all of this comparison between the centralized copyright system and the decentralized IP system created by NFTs. But so if you read the paper, you can go through item by item in the side-by-side comparison where I show how NFTs have altered, have tweaked, have reformed the arrangements established by the copyright system. And the footnote point to add to this, there's nothing suspicious about this kind of private ordering. Private ordering has been going on since the beginning of the Copyright Act. What is potentially, I think, different about this private ordering is that the main driver, the main facilitator in how the reordering is operationalized is this really clever, powerful technology of the NFT, which is a computer program, and some would characterize it as a mini computer. You can program it basically to do whatever you want for transactions that are then memorialized on blockchain. Okay, now my paper basically tries to describe what NFTs are doing. So it's descriptive. And my theory of DIP, I believe, best explains what is going on. I also do want to put a plug in for why I think this might be considered to be a positive development. I've already alluded to some aspect of it with the very difficult nature of Congress being able to undertake a massive or major revision of copyright as many people believe it should. And another reason for why I think this development is positive is that it is a lot more friendly. It's at a decentralized level, and it's more open to people to try to develop or rearrange the copyright system in a way that serves them better. So for instance, authors have chosen resale royalty rights for every sale of an NFT they've created. They can select, for instance, let's say 10% of every resale of that NFT. So if you sell the NFT for $1,000 in year one, but in 5 years it's selling for $1 million, that further sale down in 5 years, the creator of the NFT gets the 10% cut of the $1 million sale. And this has turned out to be extremely popular. It gives authors, independent artists especially, the opportunity to work full-time as an artist, as opposed to having to work 3 jobs to support their artistic endeavors. Now, DIP is not only author sort of friendly, it doesn't only serve authors, but users of NFTs and the associated content with those NFTs can also sort of develop norms or practices in this decentralized system. And what we have seen is, so far at least, is a very permissive remix culture, to borrow the phrase of Larry Lessig's book, where secondary users have been making clones, derivatives, expansion versions of very popular NFT collections, such as the Bored Ape Yacht Club, such as the CryptoPunks, and other really popular NFT collections. And to a large extent, there are really no copyright infringement lawsuits for those popular NFT collections being brought. In other words, the creators of those collections have largely been permissive about allowing expansion punks, expansion clones, apes, excuse me, derivatives. And that is a form of creativity that we might not necessarily see in the more traditional approach to copyright, where anything that remotely looks like a derivative might spark a copyright infringement lawsuit. Relatedly, and I have another paper that I've already posted on this, NFT creators have decided to use decentralized collaboration licenses, some of them at least. So the Bored Ape Yacht Club is one popular collection that has embraced a decollab license, giving the buyer of the NFTs unlimited commercialization rights, including the right to make derivative works, meaning derivative apes based on the character that their NFT is associated with. And we've already seen plenty of derivatives being developed by the owners of the Bored Ape NFTs. So those are just 2 reasons why I see some of the developments with DIP to be positive. Now, certainly there are problems to be worked out, and we can talk about those in a future video. But for now, I hope you do check out my paper. It took months to write, and I know it will spark some controversy. Please feel free to send me a DM if you have any feedback about the ideas. And I would love to hear your criticisms, compliments, you name it. Okay, with that, that's it for today, and I hope to see you soon. I promise to be back creating videos sooner than before, now that the some of the things on my to-do list have been removed. Take care, everyone.